going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. If you are just joining us, feel free to ask us any questions via the Q&A widget below. But this is, let me go ahead and share my screen out. And hey, using Buildkite with Datadog CI visibility. I'm Nick Rycar, Technical Product Marketing Manager at Buildkite, and I am joined today by
Brian Lee, Product Manager here at Datadog, working on our CI visibility product.
Thanks, Brian. Sorry, I'll give you more notice next time. So I'll kick things off, give you a quick overview of Buildkite. If you're new, we are a platform for running fast, secure, and scalable continuous integration pipelines on your own infrastructure. What makes Buildkite unique is that we embrace a hybrid SaaS model for CI/CD, wherein we provide our customers and users with the convenience of a hosted platform where you can go ahead and handle user authentication, pipeline creation, dashboards, etc., via Buildkite hosted dashboards. But when it comes to running your builds and tests, you have the security and flexibility of running those tests behind your firewall on your infrastructure, be they an on-prem data center or cloud vendor. Make sure that your code never has to leave your servers and that wherever you're testing your updates can be made to mirror your production environment as closely as is required. We'll also be taking a look at Datadog and specifically Datadog CI visibility. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to Brian to give you a guided tour.
Yep. For those who are unfamiliar with Datadog, we are a unified SaaS monitoring and security platform for dev, sec, ops, and business teams. We help companies understand the true state of their applications and systems infrastructure to make business decisions, troubleshoot customer issues, and ultimately improve your own end user experience. So as you can see here on the far left, we were founded in 2010, the very beginning of the Datadog platform. As you can see through the different years where we've added many different products, we've been consistently trying to break down silos between teams. So we strive to give you a holistic view of your environment to make it easier to troubleshoot and fix issues with no context switching. And so a part of this is, as you can see in 2021, is with the announcement of CI visibility. So if you go to the next slide. So historically, actually, could you click through 2 more times? Yep. So this is where CI visibility steps in. So historically, Datadog has focused on monitoring live environments, but with CI visibility, we're taking the same production grade observability seen today in our APM tool that's historically only been seen in production, and we're shifting it left and bringing this same level of production grade observability to the development environment, starting with CI. Now I think Nick will talk a bit more about how to go setting up the integration between Buildkite and Datadog. Okay, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go through this real quick first. Just a quick high-level overview of what we're providing with the product. So CI can be broadly categorized into 2 different categories of functionality. So there's the pipeline, and then there's the testing visibility. So these 2 are independent of one another. You can use them separately, but they do work better together. So from the pipeline visibility side, we provide you with a single pane of glass for CI across your entire organization. We can help identify high-value leverage points within your system to improve performance and reliability. And all of this data is available for you to create custom dashboards that you can then slice and dice as you see fit. So if you're not already familiar with Datadog, the platform is very flexible in allowing you to tag things with things like such as team names or business unit. And then that tag can propagate throughout the entire platform, making it easy to keep a similar context through products. And when it comes to testing visibility, we enable you to manage your Flaky tests. We provide that APM-like end-to-end visibility of every test. So we actually create a distributed trace for each of your tests. And we allow you to track the historical performance of your tests over time. And this has all been created with the developer in mind. So it's focused around the constructs developers work with daily, which are repos, branches, and commits. All right, over to you, Nick.
Right on. So yeah, the first part of this will take a look at setting up the integration that Buildkite has with Datadog CI visibility. And I'll run you through a bit of a practical demo of that. And then I'll hand things back over to Brian to take a look at the testing side of CI visibility. But yeah, to kick things off, configuring Datadog pipeline visibility is pretty straightforward from the Buildkite UI. It is available when you are in your organization in settings and notification services. And step one is you go ahead and give this thing a name and add your API key for Datadog. Step two is you select which pipelines or branches you want to send data to the dashboard. And there is no step three. As far as kind of how much time it took me to set up and what I get out of the box, this is definitely a great bang for my buck integration. Because with those 2 steps completed, I got build summaries for all the pipelines that I chose to track. I got interactive trend graphs showing me the historical view over time of what those pipelines are doing, and even flame graphs that visualized my builds. So why don't I go ahead and hop in? And for a little bit of bonus fun, if you joined us in our last session, we took a look at a PagerDuty notification, and I sent some changes to this bash example pipeline. Since I have my Datadog CI pipelines integration turned on, we can actually take a look at what data was captured from my last webinar's demo. And helps if I switch over to the branch I used, the very safe change branch. And we can see sort of the successful state it was in when I started my demo, when I broke it, and when I fixed it over the course of that earlier demonstration, as long as how long each of those pipeline runs took. Depending on what is happening, we can get some more interesting information. So for example, I have some pipelines that are running tasks in parallel, where if I take this campfire rowboat round pipeline, we can see here what jobs have been kicked off from it, and then which jobs are being run in tandem, where I'm actually seeing in the flame graph what the cost savings was of parallelizing this step here. In some of these runs, you'll see even more concurrency depending on, I'm using this with an auto scaling group. So if I had agents already warmed up, we can start making use of that parallelization earlier. But you can get a really very easy to parse breakdown of what's impacting each build that's running through your pipelines. We'll also end up seeing a lot more things sort of as things progress today. It is a day full of webinar fun. So as we are doing things in pipelines where there is more activity, we end up seeing kind of how we can break down the relative success and failure rates over time, as well as things like the P95 or the top 95th percentile of durations that are running in your environment, so that you can very easily identify, even if you haven't set up the more in-depth features, some high-level perhaps low-hanging fruit of where you might have slower, flaky pipelines that need some tender love and care. It also can help you correlate any failures with changes in your environment, as we can drill down here from errors into the various runs that ended in either success or failure from the dashboard. And so with that, I'll go ahead and cede the screen share. And Brian, should we go ahead and have a look at the test tracing inside of Datadog?
Yep. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah. And while Brian's getting that set up, a reminder, folks, or if you're just joining us, feel free to throw us any questions you have in the Q&A widget in Zoom webinars, and we'll spend some time at the end of the webinar answering them.
Yep. One thing I wanted to show before jumping into the test part of the product is just something here. We have a Buildkite pipeline execution here with multiple jobs. And just to point out some of the connection between the pipeline and test visibility parts of the product, if I go in here and I have both the test and pipeline set up, if tests fail during the pipeline execution, we'll see this in our test runs tab. You can come over here and then you can see exactly which tests failed, as well as the test service it belongs to. So it can help you if you're responsible for debugging the test yourself. You can come in and quickly look at the result of the test and its error message, why it may have failed, or if you're a part of like an SRE or build platform team, you can kind of know which is the team responsible for this test. All right, and coming into the test part of the product, to get started, we support specific languages, and within each language, we support specific test frameworks. And you can kind of go on and choose, kind of follow the interactive onboarding to choose what technologies you're using. And you can just follow the steps below. And alternatively, if we don't support your specific language or test framework, we do have a catch-all with JUnit XML test reports. So most test frameworks are capable of exporting their results in this JUnit XML test report format. And you can always upload that to Datadog, and we'll parse it, and it'll power this part of the product. So once you've instrumented your tests, the test part of the product will begin to populate. You can see here in this, this initial view, all of our various test services with information about the default branch. And a test service, in this case, is basically just a user-defined name that represents a collection of test suites that all test the same thing. So generally, this maps one-to-one with a repository. Or if you have a mono repo, you can always section off multiple test services for a single repo, which is what we do at Datadog. And here for the default branch, we'll show you things like the number of flaky tests that we've identified. So these are tests that are actually failing and passing for the same commit. So whether your test framework, you set up retries in your test framework, or your engineers are retrying builds if they fail the first time, that's what we use as signal to determine if a test is flaky or not. We also have the wall time, both the P50 and P95 wall time. And the wall time is the real world elapsed time. So basically, if you were to parallelize your tests, this number would go down. And we'll show you the latest result of the most recent commit for this default branch, along with some of the Git information. So this Git information is automatically pulled from the .git folder of your Buildkite. And this is what we'll use to populate this information. And since we know this product will be used a lot, quite often by individual contributor developers, we also have this branches view, which allows you to see all branches across all repositories. This includes the test status. What's interesting to point out here is that these test statuses are aggregated statuses at the level of the commit. So what that means is if you have 50 tests in your test suite and you were to retry a build 3 times with that commit, instead of showing 150 test results here, we would still only show the 50 unique test results. And so if, for example, in the first build, your test fails, and then in the second build, that same test passes, that would, the test status would actually transition from failed to passed. And additionally, we would then mark it as flaky. We also give you some additional context to let developers know if they're about to introduce a regression, whether that's in flakiness or in performance. So here we'll show for this these different feature branches if they introduce any new flaky tests that we haven't yet seen in the default branch. And also with the wall time, we'll give a comparison to the average of the default branch, which lets your developers know again, are they about to introduce a regression before they merge? So really there's kind of two major use cases we're trying to solve with this product. One is a more reactive use case in which a developer has pushed a commit, it's failing, and they need to debug it. And then the other one is a more proactive use case, usually more with like a lead developer or engineering manager in mind, where they care about the overall health of a service. And they know that the flakiness or any given test will impact all the developers working on the same service. So it's important to improve and reduce the flakiness of the test suite as a whole. So if I click into a specific commit, and so for example, this one is failing, I can see the most recent Git information with this commit. I can see all of the failed tests up front, along with their the error type and message. So it can help give you an idea of why the test is failing without having to dig too deep. We'll also have a table of all of the new flaky tests introduced. If you've introduced any new flaky tests, along with the slowest tests of the commit, and any related pipeline executions. So you may retry multiple pipelines against the same commit, and we'll show all of those here. At the bottom, you have access to all the underlying raw data of each individual test run. And so moving up to the branch level, here's where you can do more of that proactive use case. You can change which branch you're inspecting at the top. So whether the default branch or maybe a different feature or staging branch. You can also change the time frame you're interested in. Here we'll show a commit history table. So you can see the latest status of the most recent commits. We'll also show you all of the flaky tests we've identified for you, with some information to help you triage and some tools to help you manage these flaky tests. So things like the average duration of these tests, the time and the commit in which this test first flaked. So you can be reasonably sure that this commit either introduced these flaky tests or involved code change that made this test flaky. We'll show you when the test last flaked, how many commits it flaked in, the overall failure rate, because not all flaky tests are equal. So a test that flakes 50% of the time is going to be much more problematic and much more higher urgency to fix than a test that only flakes maybe 2.9% of the time. And here we'll show you a failure trend graph, which gives you an idea of, is this an ongoing issue? Is this test continuing to fail? Or maybe it hasn't failed at all in the past week and it's actually been fixed already. And you can come in here and you can manually remove a flaky test if you know you've fixed it. Alternatively, if a test hasn't flaked in the past 30 days, then we'll automatically remove it for you. We'll also show you all of your slowest tests of the test suite with both the P50 and P95 duration, and a table of common error types. So anytime a test fails, we capture the error type over the given time frame and we aggregate it here. So if there is a common underlying root cause causing many of your tests to fail over time, that can help be surfaced. And these are all interactable. So these are all aggregate insights of the underlying raw information of the individual test runs. So for example, I can come in here into a specific error type. I can filter my test runs by this error type. I can expand the test name and test suite filter facets. And I can kind of get an idea of which tests or which test suites are all failing for similar reasons. And if we want to debug a flaky test, for example, I can click on this flaky test and I can go to either when the test last failed, or I can go to when the test first exhibited that flakiness. So I can go ahead and click on this. And here's where it'll pull up that distributed trace for me. So we do this again by auto-instrumenting the various testing frameworks I mentioned earlier. And we also instrument common libraries like HTTP, gRPC, and SQL. So this all comes out of the box for you without, you would have to add a line of code to your service. But we also, as part of this distributed trace, if you are testing against staging or production, and you happen to use our APM product and you've instrumented those services with APM already, we piggyback on all that existing instrumentation. So you don't have to do instrumentation work twice. And you can actually see in this trace here, this has touched many services, including web servers, databases, caches, proxies. So you can kind of get that full end-to-end, exactly know what the request was of the test and where there may have been problems. So this trace here in the root span, this top span, it represents the test trace, the test itself. So here I can see information about CI metadata. I can also see Git metadata associated with this test, as well as more information about the test itself, including configuration, parameter information, runtime, and so on. And then it's really easy to identify if the test fails, one of these complex integration tests, which test service or which services were involved and the most likely culprits for this test failure. So oftentimes, if a test like this fails, normally you would only see this, the information of this first span, and the rest of this would be dropped by the test harness. But here, this is all collected and stored so that your developers don't need to try to reproduce the issue after the fact, which we know can be quite frustrating and time intensive. We also have here, since the product is aware of Git metadata, we know that this test was actually retried 21 times against the same commit. So here we show all of the retries in this left-hand sidebar, so you can quickly jump back and forth between multiple runs of this test against the same commit. If I come into the errors tab, we aggregate and show all the errors here. And we also show you the stack trace if there is one. Next, we also have the historical performance of these tests. So this one is actually demo data, so it's not too interesting here. But if you were to see, it's easy to identify trends of whether a test is getting faster or slower over time. And what's especially helpful is if a test gets much slower with the specific test run, you can click on that test run, you can see the Git metadata associated with it, and you can see which commit introduced that, that regression, and dig into what the code change was, who the author was, and you can roll back or investigate and fix the issue. The last thing I wanted to show is with our dashboard. So dashboarding at Datadog is quite easy. We have a drag and drop way to create widgets and dashboards. And I wanted to show that you can use, by selecting the data source, you have access to all your CI pipeline data and CI test data. So this makes it really easy to go in. For example, if I'm interested in my tests, I can filter by a specific repo, for example. And if I'm interested in showing all of my slowest tests across the repo, I can change the measure to duration. I can go to P99, and then I can group by test name. And make this a little bit easier to see. I can create look at it as a top list. change to the top 25. And here I can see all of my slowest tests across the repository, or even, if I'm a build engineering engineer and I want to see across the whole entire CI system, I can remove the repo filter facet, repo filter, and I can look across my entire CI system. What are the slowest tests? So that was a quick run through of the testing visibility side of the product.
That was awesome. Thank you. It looks like we did have a few questions roll in, and actually one of the first ones I think rolled in right before it was covered in your deck, but figured it was worth calling out, which was which testing frameworks are supported. There is, and I grabbed the link while you were presenting. So for folks in chat, here is the Datadog docs link, but there's a bunch. And let's see here. What else have we got? We had someone ask whether pipelines can be sorted by plugins or custom tags. And the example they gave was they'd like to view metrics for all pipelines, say, deploying to Kubernetes.
Yep. So right now, we only have the ability to add custom tags to some of the CI providers. We're currently working on it for Buildkite, so it's coming shortly, but you will be able to tag specific pipelines and jobs with your custom tags, and you can do that however you want. There are also some tags that we inject automatically, like node labels, for example. So, a common use case at Datadog is we're building various node clusters dedicated to Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. And so we can see kind of spikes in resource usage or queue times according to a certain node label, and that can kind of give us a clue as to which node clusters we can scale up or scale down.
Right on. There's the $64,000 question someone asked, which is, how does test analytics compare to test analysis in Datadog CI visibility? So this is something where I think a comprehensive answer is not possible because neither of us knows the other's tool deep enough to compare and contrast. But I think there are definitely some high level takeaways where, obviously, ours is a newly launched beta. We have our spec support with a few other frameworks planned. And I think they're very similar as far as how they're invoked. I think comparing our spec to our spec, we both have Ruby gems that you add to your test suite and pick things up via our agents for builds and APM respectively. But as far as feature by feature comparison, I don't think I'd be able to give you that today, but hopefully that covers things at a high level. Let's see here. I think that's all we have for questions. So leave the floor open another minute, folks. If you have questions, feel free to send them in. But if we are wrapping up, I'll go ahead and call out. Let's see, where are we in our day? So folks that are joining us live, our next webinar will be at 1 o'clock Pacific. Where we will be joined by Pierre Tessier from Honeycomb. And oh, hey, we've got another thing. So just got a question about test analytics, which we'll have a webinar later today. We'll be doing a test analytics deep dive. So I'll go ahead and defer on that for the moment. But a good call out to, if you'd like to see what other webinars are going on and when, go ahead and navigate on over to UnblockConf.dev. And you'll see all of the day's webinars. If you'd like to join the Test Analytics Deep Dive, that is at 5 p.m. Pacific today. Right on. Brian, thank you so much. Oh, wait, we got one. So we had a question come in on pipeline visibility. Is Datadog able to highlight individual jobs that are bottlenecking the overall build?
Yes. So actually, if I share my screen real quick, if you come into pipeline executions, you can actually see all the pipeline stages, jobs across your entire CI at your organization. So we also have, like I mentioned, you have a quick way to be able to slice and dice all of your information however you want to. So for example, if we wanted to search that query you just talked about, actually search for errors, group by job name. Yeah, and right here, you basically have a quick list of all of your jobs that are failing most often. If you want to search, narrow it down to certain pipelines or what have you, eventually those custom tags, you'd be able to do that as well.
Excellent. Well, right on. I think that covers all of the questions we've had. Brian, thank you so much for joining us and presenting. What's going on in Datadog's world? Anything that you'd like to promote while I've got you?
Just so CI visibility was one, we recently went generally available 2 weeks ago during our Dash conference.
Yes.
So the product is still very new. You can go and start a free trial of it, begin using it. Yeah, and if you do give it a try, you can contact me. I put my email in the chat bar. So feel free if you have any questions, any trouble getting set up, or if you have any feedback around features you dislike, want to see in the future, we're more than happy to get plenty of feedback around this new product.
Right on. And that's right. I had almost forgot. We were at Dash. That was a ton of fun. And I'll throw into the chat for folks. There is a feature roundup of all the fun stuff that was announced at Dash this year. Thanks again so much for joining us, Brian. I think we are going to go ahead and get things wrapped up. Folks, if you joined us late, this will be available on demand. So don't worry, you won't have missed anything. You can go ahead and catch us on the replay. And we'll see you again at 1 o'clock if you're joining live.